toxicity doesn't always look dramatic. It can be very quiet and it can be even praised. So, today we will dive into the topic of toxicity, either be it from people, different places, or anything else. Welcome back to our channel. It's Curiously Quirky, and I am Gauher.
Man.
And stay tuned for our episode today. Let's dive into it. So, why removing wrong energy from our life makes things better, and why your definition of toxicity really matters? So, let's talk about what toxicity really is. In my mind, it's really subjective. What is toxicity in your mind?
Well, if someone is constantly criticizing and not supporting, there is a difference between constructive criticism and overall just criticism for the sake of criticism, or as it would seem so. Or if someone was having a bad day and then so-called is having a go at you, that's also a form of toxicity.
Yeah.
Toxic people, well, they are just spreading the unpleasantness. And I understand everyone can be unhappy and unpleasant at various stages in life. But with toxic people, it's a consistency that's visible. Their toxicity is very consistent and prevalent, with a small break once in a while, whereas non-toxic and positive people still can display some traits of toxicity, but that's an outlier. Normally they are overall positive with some negativity or toxicity once in a while, occasionally, while generally toxic people showing some positivity as an outlier.
Yeah. And on that, I have a question for you. Since you mentioned about toxic, like people having toxicity, what are your thoughts about toxicity being very subjective? For example, the same people who maybe yourself are finding toxic might not be toxic for someone else. So, what are your, or even like a job, if it's toxic for someone, it may not be toxic for someone else. Like someone else might thrive in that environment or with that person that you are finding toxic. So, what is your take on that?
Toxicity can be gotten used to, and some people have varying levels of natural toxicity, and for some that is acceptable, for some it isn't. It all depends on the personal baseline. Overall, any kind of toxicity is wrong and should be addressed and transformed into not toxic. For example, a criticism, from toxic criticism, it could be transformed into a constructive criticism. Many jobs are toxic. That's human nature. The bad CEO transfers his stressfulness. The bad CEO requests a big workload, gives unreasonable demands, and that transfers to his subordinates, which normally are team leaders, and then they transfer that pressure to their subordinates, regular employees, and that's when for everyone the environment gets toxic and unpleasant. Some people can get used to such toxic stress, and when they move to a better work culture place, then they suddenly realize that they're missing something.
Yeah.
They're missing that stress.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to talk about some toxicity in people. Like when we say toxic people, it may not be that they are actually toxic. It might be they have a side of toxicity to them, but they might not be entirely a toxic person. They would still have a good side to them. But I want to talk about, based on our own cultures, about like if we have some relatives that have a toxic side to them or friends that have a toxic side to them, what is the implications of it in our culture? I want to first start with my own culture. So I am from Pakistan, and in Pakistan, like family matters a lot, and there's like a lot of society pressure as well. So if you have some relatives that are not necessarily very good for you, they just bring you down all the time, then you sort of have this family pressure from your immediate family to still maintain ties with them, even though they are bringing you down and they are like breaking you and stopping your progress. But you still have to maintain ties with them because you just have that family pressure. And the same thing with friends. Like if you are in a friends group and there are some people that are really toxic for you, but you still can't escape it because you still want to be a part of that group, and it's just really hard to get away from toxic people. Like you can, but it's really hard in Pakistan because there are a lot of society pressures that you have to consider. While in the UK, I've noticed it's a lot easier to cut people off. Like if you find somebody toxic and you're not thriving in their
Mm-hmm.
company, it's a lot easier to just move away and distance yourself from them. I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask from you, how is it like in Lithuania?
In Lithuania, the expectation is very similar to how you described in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Now, in even though this is the expectation in real world, in your environment or your family or your immediate or not immediate friend circle, how did people behave? Did they tolerate someone or did they cut off eventually?
So I have examples in my family, particularly, where people have had ties with each other, um, just because they are related, or like people have maintained friendships because they have no other option. They just have to. It's like, I don't know. It's because you are friends, so you put up with their toxic attitude.
And have they ever cut any tie?
People do cut ties, but it needs very like severe something to happen in order for people to cut ties with toxic people. I
Mm-hmm.
have seen people cutting ties in Pakistan, but it needs
Mm-hmm.
to be something very severe. In normal circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
they just won't cut ties. What is your experience in Lithuania? Has it happened that in your family or in your friends group have people cut ties with each other? Have you experienced that thing?
Well, in Lithuania, there are certainly some in my circles. There are people who tend to display various forms of toxicity, including manipulation, gaslighting, and so on. And I have seen some people I know tried to cut ties with them, but since they are in the immediate circle, sometimes there is a friend or family gathering after some years, let's say every 5 years or so, and then you're still forced to talk with that person, and then this conversation becomes a bit artificial, as if you're holding a sword behind you. And how are you? Oh yeah, very good. I'm holding sword. Very good. And how are you? Very good.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
would you like to come over to our site? No, I wouldn't like. So then such engagement becomes artificial. And again, for me, practically, since now I live in a different country, getting rid of toxic people is actually much easier thing to do.
I agree. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
living in the UK, it's a lot easier to cut ties with people that are just bringing us down. If they are, especially if they are back home, it's a lot easier. But while living in the home countries, it becomes really hard.
We have dropped ties with maybe 4 people in UK and maybe several in our countries too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And what are your thoughts about the same toxic trait people that we want to cut out of our lives being very manipulative? And as you mentioned, that sometimes you run into the people in a family gathering, for example, and then you have to talk to them. Um, then sometimes people are really manipulative and they like crawl back up into your lives, and then it's like, oh, everything is fine and normal again, but then again they start to gradually bring you down. Like, have you experienced that kind of thing? Because I have in my culture. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, this has happened practically exactly word by word, where there are people who do horrible things. They do something what a stranger or an enemy would do, and then they pull strings and try to crawl back and pretend that things are normal, and maybe it's normal for them.
Yeah.
But I don't forget. People say, Lord forgives and forgets. I'm not a Lord. I don't forgive. I don't forget. I remember what they done to me, and such actions have consequences. So I try to limit them out of my life.
Yeah.
If completely removal is not an option, then that's fine. Limiting as much as possible is the next best thing, and so should do you.
Yeah, definitely. And if you now link it with toxicity of people, and again, toxicity being very subjective, like those people that you mentioned, even if they are being toxic to you and you don't like those behaviors that are bringing you down, those behaviors might still work for somebody else. Like, for example, when I am told by someone that, oh, you're lazy, you should do more things, as much as that's a toxic attitude and I don't like it, I would like to cut ties with that person. That same thing might work for somebody else because it's very subjective. That type of language, although it's, I would count it as toxic, but might still work for somebody else. It just works for their motivation. Even if it's toxic, that might still work for somebody else. So, in my mind, I think toxicity is very subjective. What is your take on that now, talking about from the relatives and friends' point of view?
Well, I agree that some words to or from different person can be perceived differently.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
What would be your advice to people that actually want to set healthy boundaries with some toxic relatives? For example, if they are in Pakistan or Lithuania or in a country where it's hard to sort of cut ties with a toxic relative or a toxic friend, what would be your advice to them to just have that healthy boundary with them where they can't bring them down?
Sometimes cutting ties is impossible,
Yeah.
but you should never forget why you decided to cut ties even though it wasn't possible. Let's look what other successful people have to say first. If you ask for general life advice from millionaires, they could give a lot of different advice, such as work hard, only work for yourself, not others, and so on. So their response, the common thing is that they are very diverse. There's practically nothing common. The only common thing is that it's uncommon. Now, if you look at billionaires who have many thousands of millions gathered, then if you ask their life advice, their life advice is very common, and practically many different people say the same thing in different words, and that is just cut them off, cut off toxic people. So I see a very interesting correlation, because very successful people who have acquired a lot of money, billionaires, they just can't tolerate toxic people, and if something is toxic in their environment, they just cut them off and they're done with it, even if it is from a friend to the closest of relative. Now, that's a very interesting scenario. So how come it's working? Well, obviously they have been cutting off toxic people and they are now so rich and wealthy.
Yeah.
Is it a correlation? Maybe it is.
It certainly is, because in a way it's not just about cutting toxic people, it's more about creating space for yourself. The more you can push out the negativity out of life, then there's room for other things, and that's what billionaires would do, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think we are not billionaires, but still you should consider that as well. Just if you cannot cut off toxic people right now, remember, why did you decide this in the first place? And maybe you'll get a chance to cut them off in the future. Don't forget that. I say that toxic people place energetical chain onto you with an anchor, and that anchor drags along, and even though you're not engaging with that toxic person at the moment, but since that person is not cut off, the anchor still exists. It drags along and slows your progress. It can stop your progress. It can slow your progress. So then you have to make a compromise. Either you stay around with the toxic person and don't achieve success, or you choose various success in whatever you're doing and just remove toxic people from your environment. You have to choose one or another. That's the philosophy.
Yeah.
Once you cut toxic people off, that anchor dissolves, and then you can move forward. Then the success starts. Try it out.
That's a very good point to take home from this discussion.
We've partnered with Ground News. They put divided news back together. You can see how many sources are reporting on any breaking story, where they fall on the political spectrum, how reliable they are, and who owns them. Compare headlines and read full articles to see which details are prioritized, exaggerated, or left out entirely. Understanding the media helps us understand each other better. Use this QR code to get 40% off when you sign up. The discount code's also in the description.
Now that we've talked about the toxicity in people, let's also talk about toxicity in jobs, which we have already discussed slightly bit, but let's expand on that. So I look at toxicity in jobs a bit like poison. I've been watching a lot of Netflix documentaries on poisons, and that's the only anecdote that I can think of at the moment. So it's a bit like staying in a toxic job is a bit like somebody giving you poison. So if you take 100% of that poison, you die. But what you can do is, if you are in a job and you recognize that, oh, this environment is very toxic for me, it is bringing me down, what you can do is you can start slightly withdrawing from it and maybe give less percent to that job. If it's not possible for you to leave right away, just start giving less, like detach yourself from that job. Even if you need to stay there, just detach it, and then it's a bit like taking a lesser percentage of that poison. It's still gonna get to you, but in the long run. So you can still have some energy to look out for your exit plan. Like, make your exit plan. Even if you're starting a job and you recognize the very first day that, oh, where have I landed? This is a horrible work environment. Start working on your exit plan from that day. Don't wait that, oh, I need to wait 6 months or 3 months. It would look bad on my CV. Don't think about that, because toxic jobs are gonna eat you. So if you don't like the environment, if you're not keen on it, just work on your exit plan and start detaching yourself already.
That's a wonderful comparison with poison.
Yeah.
And by the way, it won't look bad on CV. There's always a legitimate excuse.
Yeah.
Now, regarding poison, some poisons people and animals can get used to. So I guess this parallel works well because some people get used to work, toxicity, and poison.
Yeah.
And once they move elsewhere, they miss it.
Yeah. Again, it's like our previous point. Again, it's very subjective, where job toxicity, for some people, that pressured environment, they might thrive in it. And for some people, that might not work for them at all. And that might be very toxic for them. So it's very subjective on what people can find very toxic. And the same way, if some job environment, if it's really slow, it may not work for people that function well in a like high-paced environment. So a very slow pace might be toxic for them. So it really depends what their definition of toxicity is. So it's important to identify that, oh, this environment, particular environment, or this particular person does not work for me. It may work for others, but for me subjectively, this does not work and I cannot thrive. This situation brings me down. And that's when, once you recognize, you can start your exit plan on how to get out of this toxic situation. And while you're at a toxic job, it could be anything like underpaid, if they're asking you to do overtime, if there are any other things you have to report on each and everything, like micromanagement. If there's anything that just doesn't work for you, work on your exit plan and leave. And in the meantime that you cannot leave, just put healthy boundaries again, just like with people. Put healthy boundaries. Say no. What are they gonna do? Like, they would fire, but then you can move on. There's always something else that you can do. If they fire, they're just not worth it. It's just not worth your energy. So just get out of there.
In some cultures, it might be a challenge, especially where jobs are scarce.
Yeah.
But even if you have to stay there, you can slowly start building a house until you can transition somewhere else.
Yeah. This brings me really nicely to the next topic that I wanted to talk about, like toxicity of one's lifestyle. Like, as we talk about the toxic jobs, where people might find it hard to say no, that could also be a part of a toxic lifestyle, where actually in your life you just find it hard to say no. You just don't feel like prioritizing your own needs. So I want to talk about Maslow's. Have you seen that Maslow's pyramid?
I know that.
So if you haven't, take a look. So according to Maslow's pyramid, they have at the very bottom, they have physiological needs, and that's like food and like very basic needs that we have, like our sleep, our relaxation, and our physical health. So all of that comes at the very prime importance. Only after that we can progress to like financial or any other needs. Very basic things. We need to look after our health. That's the primal thing. And if there is a lifestyle that you're living, that you're actually neglecting your health, like you're not sleeping enough or you're not eating well, that's a toxic lifestyle. So need to recognize it. And it's really hard to recognize, because if you are doing okay day to day, you may not recognize that, oh, I've been struggling with something. It's actually coming down to my toxic lifestyle. So it's important to recognize that and make healthy changes in your lifestyle. Like if you are sleeping less and working more, just maybe consider sleeping more. I've seen that in people where there are so much workaholics because that fuels their energy that they like to work, which is fair, but they can't be neglecting their basic needs of sleep and eating. That always comes first.
Yeah, I think the Japanese are known for stereotypically working a lot or even working to death.
Yeah.
I think from Japan, we learned that if a person sleeps for 4 hours, then dies after 2 weeks of such lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in Pakistan, it's very common to have like a very long work hours and like hanging out with friends, which is good, but hanging out maybe more than you are able to then prioritize your own health. Like you also need winding down. Everything is good in uh, what's that called, in moderation. Everything is good in moderation, but if you're overdoing one aspect of life, like if you're sleeping a lot more than needed, if you're hanging out with friends a lot more than needed, if you're working a lot more than needed, then that sort of messes up the balance in your life. So it's important to identify these toxic behaviors of your own lifestyle and make some tweaks.
Yeah, I noticed it also is culture dependent. I believe that in UK everything is average.
Yeah.
In Lithuania and maybe generally Europe, people tend to display high levels of influence upon others, and in turn people get higher resistance to influence. I noticed that in Pakistan people are not appearing to be very resistant for influencing, and maybe that's when they cannot say no when they are being invited to go out, hang out with people.
Yeah. My question to you would be, how would you find balance in a scenario, for example, in Europe, where you are used to having that authority, giving authority to someone? Where do you find that balance to give authority but also have some time where you don't always have to give authority? So, like a balance between authority and non authority, and not an authority all the time, because that can also get stressful if you are trying to control each and every narrative. Then that can also get very like stressful, and that can become toxic if you are staying in that mindset. That's where we have had like world leaders that have been like very authoritative, but that has become very toxic. So how do you find that balance then?
People get used to giving commands and receiving commands, and then in the end, spoken word doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
And I noticed that a spoken word in Pakistani culture has more truth to it, more meaning. And in Lithuania, in particular, word is not as strong. You can say that, yeah, you can say that, and who cares, and so on.
Yeah, in Pakistan, people are more sentimental. Like they would really dig into what you've been saying, and they would overanalyze some words. But in Lithuania, I've noticed that they are very cutthroat, straightforward, and wouldn't think much inside
Yeah,
a word's meaning.
yeah. For example, if you're gifting something, you can say, "Here's a present," and if you don't like it, the bin is over there.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
or if you're handling something, you receive criticism, you can say, "Okay, I'll go throw this away," or I'll just toss it out. Doesn't mean that you'll just damage it or throw it away. You just give this word, which doesn't mean much.
Like a threat.
You
Like a
give
little
this
threat.
word as a little threat that something will happen because you received some criticism or something else.
Yeah.
So, and when you engage with different people, different culture people, then you have to watch out for that, because other people are not used to that and they might take it too serious.
Yeah. Like so far in the UK, I've found it quite a balanced approach as compared to like Pakistan or Lithuania. Like people here have balance worked out quite well. Like they have balance with their work, with their friends, family, and anything else that they do. So I think here it's a lot easier if somebody moves to the UK. It's easier for them to get used to that balance that other people have. But yeah, if you're in a different country, it can be a bit hard. So it's important to acknowledge where your lifestyle is becoming a bit toxic and taking action on that.
So on the topic of lifestyle toxicity, when you first mentioned, I wanted to mention a few direct things, literally toxicity as of poison or something not healthy. So I noticed that in Pakistan there is quite a bit of toxicity where food products are not regulated. That means there can be literal bacterial contamination from flies or poor hygiene conditions.
Oh, so you mean like biological toxicity?
Yeah,
Fair enough.
and there's not much regulation. If people start dying from eating something, then that product is taken out of market, the manufacturer is placed to prison. But there is probably very little testing. The environment appears to be more polluted at the moment, more toxic
Yeah.
when compared to, let's say, UK or Lithuania. Now, in Lithuania, while there is all that EU regulation, toxicity levels have been decreasing. Well, I believe Lithuania is for now the only country in the planet that has the food grades in classes. So
Yeah.
first class, second class, and so on. And then you can buy first class food. It's more expensive, but you just don't need to even read ingredients or overthink. You know it will be good. In UK, well, the regulation is strong. Overall food quality is high. Toxicity of anything is low, very low. I would say even lower than Lithuania.
Yeah.
So in terms of lack of toxicity, I think UK is a pretty good place.
Yeah, I agree. I think food quality is really good in the UK. And also in terms of pollution that you mentioned, in Pakistan, I used to really struggle with the noise pollution as well. Like it's very noisy. It can get very noisy, and because of the air quality, it's a bit harder to breathe for people that have like asthma related things.
This extra regulation from UK can become a little bit toxic, where everything has their own units. For example, when you sleep in bed, you cover yourself with that cover. It's called duvet. And based on how warm it is rated at different warmth levels, and that's called tog.
Yeah.
So in summer you can use 3 or 4 tog. In winter, very cold winter, can be even as high as 16 or so.
Yeah.
Then everything is regulated in terms of placed in order, sometimes where it's not very much necessary.
Yeah.
In Lithuania, there is less such regulation. For example, even here in the forest, as you can see, all the trees are planted basically in a row. There are many different rows of trees. It's artificial. In Lithuania, there is no such thing where you go into the forest and it's rows. Maybe because the forests are typically old. Maybe in a new forest you can get some shape or formation.
Yeah. So this brings me to our next point. We talked about the toxicity of lifestyle, but let's also talk about toxicity that a person can have within themselves, where they feel the need to criticize themselves a lot, like people pleasing, which you already covered that they can't say no. But it's also about like people being very critical for themselves while not being as critical to others. So I went to a training a few months ago, and there's one thing that I learned that really stuck with me, that you should not say to yourself what you wouldn't say to others. So you should always be kind to yourself. If you want to criticize yourself, just think that would you say that same thing to someone else? And if the answer is no, then maybe don't say that to yourself, because you have to take care of your own like emotional well-being. We are a lot more harsher to ourselves, but it's really easy to then just get depressed or have that anxiety of doing something if you're constantly bringing ourselves down. So it's important to acknowledge and again take action and be a bit kinder to ourselves, so we are not actually being toxic to our own self.
Well, normally people who I believe who observe these traits, they are more caring about other individuals. Maybe they are more altruistic. If a person is truly greedy and self-centered, then normally they would not do or say anything negative towards themselves, only to others. Normally that is the toxic person.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's the other way around. Yeah, like with that, I want people to think about what is that one person, either it's a relative or a friend, that you can distance yourself from, that you think brings you down, and without them you can do a lot better. Think about who they are and how your life can be better without them, and how you can put in healthy boundaries with them. Also think about your job and your lifestyle. Think about what thing is it. Do I need an exit strategy now? And if so, if you're not happy in your job, start looking elsewhere. Start a way thinking about a way out. That's my takeaway from this episode. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, nothing else.
Thank you so much for listening to our episode. I hope the discussion was helpful to you. If you have any other topics that you would like us to talk about, feel free to comment down below and we'll address them and do a podcast. If there are any other locations in the UK that you would like us to go to and record a podcast, let us know and we'll do that as well.
If you think this video is worth watching, then do click like, subscribe. It's hard to be seen these days.
Yeah.
We have YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
Go follow us on Instagram. We also make comedy skits on there.
And we will see you next time.